Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/312, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 312th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining on this edition, day one of the Florida 2023 tour. It is my annual winter ride in Florida, but things turned out a little differently this year. Day one featured a massive headwind that whittled down my energy and made for challenging audio conditions. It was only 40 miles, but would the wind prevail? Folks, I ended up having to toss about 30 minutes, probably more than 30 minutes of my usual witty banter and ride info because the headwinds that I'm describing here from Tampa to Lakeland were just brutal. I used a dedicated recorder on this trip with what we call a dead cat lavalier. It's kind of this like fuzzy thing. It's literally meant to defeat wind. And even that didn't really work all that well. The headwinds managed to cut through. So as a result, you're getting less of an episode than I would have liked, but it's still a decent sized episode. Some of what you hear is not going to sound great. I'm going to be honest with you, but the vast majority is understandable. To be honest, had I not done what I did, I think that we would have lost all of the audio for the day. I ended up solving the problem the next day, and you'll find more about that next week. So you only have to put up with it for this week. It's totally fine. I feel like I'm a broken record lately on these tour journals about audio quality, but stick with me here. This was a really fun ride, and I can't wait for you to listen. So thank you for your patience getting this out a few days late. Off we go. Good morning from Washington Reagan National Airport, DCA, as we like to call it here in the nation's capital. Actually, I'm in Arlington, Virginia. This is the beginning of the adventure. And I have found myself a nice little place tucked away from any crowds or any noise or anything like that pre-security. Got here no problem. It is freezing here this morning, quite literally. It is 15 degrees right now in DC, and the high today where I'll be biking will be somewhere in the lowish 70s, so I'm looking like I picked the right time. Everything is good. I'm all packed. I'm all checked in. I did something different this time. I threw one of those fancy Apple AirTags into my bag, so I'm going to track and see how that impacts its movement. That'll be kind of interesting. Make sure it gets on the plane, stuff like that. Brompton is all folded up and ready to roll, and I've got another bag with me as well that is just going under the seat, the usual kind of setup that I've got. So let's see, updates for you since the preview episode. The big ticket thing is that today is going to be dry, but tomorrow does look like rain. So that is going to be, that of course impacted stuff I brought. I brought rain gear. It may not impact me until the end of the day, perhaps even as late as when I make my decision for the short version or long version, but that's of course not going to be for you in this particular episode. It'll be for next week. So I don't have anything else really to say other than I'm very excited to be going. Had a cup of coffee. I do have a protein bar that I might eat on the plane just to get a little something in me. I do plan on stopping in Ybor City, which I'm very excited about. Interestingly, my Lyft driver knew all about Ybor City, so that was kind of fun. So that'll be the beginning of my day, and I'm really looking forward to getting myself on the plane and getting the bike in and just getting past all that stress. One thing I will note for the record, when I have flown with a Brompton before, I always have some degree of stress at this very point. Just getting the bike through security, also just getting the bike through and on the plane and all that. And this morning, I'm really very chill. I'm hoping that is not misplaced. I do have my backup. And for those of you who are new to what happens when you're flying with a Brompton, the big ticket thing is getting past the check-in point, security is rarely an issue, although it does have to go through the machine. But the issue is when you board. Now in Southwest, they are historically really, really good about Bromptons. Many of the flight attendants actually even know what they are, and everything is cool. The other thing that I'll say is that I have such an early boarding. I bought you buy a special thing, because if you're not familiar with Southwest Airlines, if you're not in the States, for instance, they do boarding without an assigned seat. So your boarding order is going to essentially dictate how easy it is for you to get bags and whatnot in the overhead bins. So I always purchase the, hey, check me in early kind of a thing. And the nature of my number is so low that I believe that this may not be a very full flight, which would be fantastic. But even if it is, and I'm incorrect, I'm so early in the process that there's going to be no question that not only will I get a spot for the Brompton very easily, but I probably will be close to the front of the plane as well. So, less stress. Everything went well. If you contrast it with last year, when at this point I ended up forgetting my AirPods at security, had to come running back, ended up getting them. Later in the morning, lost my ID in Tampa. All of these things I'm going to make sure that I'm not doing. I'm not going to be a rookie about flying, and I think it'll be all good. All right, I see flight attendants and pilots that may or may not be for me. That'll be interesting. Guess we'll see. Okay, more to come. The next you'll hear from me is going to be Tampa, Florida. From Tampa, Florida, this is me riding out of the public bus. Very smooth, very easy riding or setup so far. Trying to get my gearing dialed in. The one challenge that we've got, I just realized I haven't started my navigation, so I should do that, is that I brought too much stuff and not a big enough rear bag. It's fine. I can make it work, but let's see. Hitting navigate now. Excellent. And we're off. I'm going to clip up my front bag. I probably can shut it, but it sort of serves as a de facto handlebar bag for the Brompton. It is a little wiggly, but it'll do. Because it was so cold this morning, it was I think 14, 15 degrees in DC when I took off, I had to basically be pretty layered up, and it kind of messed up my concept of how much space I had in my bags. So now I've got a very stuffed dry bag, but it doesn't hold some of the heavier stuff that I would like it to on the rear rack. So what I'm left with is a lot more weight on the front block than I would like. Here we go, back into the wind. It took me so much longer. This kind of goes back to the drag of the too much stuff, not enough storage situation. It just took me a while to pull it all together, and I did it because I was also changing, I did all of it in stall, and it just felt like I felt very rushed the whole time. And my partner Kimberly can attest to you that I hate being rushed in my travels. I would rather show up early at an airport and sit for an hour. So anyways, I did feel a little rushed. I was able to get everything together, but I am wearing my white rain jacket because there's between the breeze and being about 60, it's fine to wear something like this at the moment. But crossing West Shore, which in past routes I have taken to get to the downtown area, which, as I mentioned in the preview episode, I will not be taking this particular trip. Cuts off a few miles, cuts off the possibility of running into multi-use path congestion here on this gorgeous Saturday morning. So I'm gonna stick with the Strode and cut off a few miles, get to Ybor City pretty quickly. Sorry, Ybor City. I noticed, by the way, and you probably did too, that right after talking about how I knew how to pronounce Ybor City, said Ybor City in the preview episode. So I apologize again. Ybor City, I'm going to be getting there and grabbing some breakfast, and finally off. And that will be, I think, a wonderful addition to today, because once I get out of Tampa, if you've been with this ride before, you know as well as I do that things get real quiet real quick. Really until we get to Plant City. Grab a lunch probably before I really exit Tampa. I may not eat it in that moment, but I will grab something just to have. I had a bar this morning, so I am suspending the intermittent fasting. Weather, as I mentioned, is beautiful, and I am enjoying the ride so far. I feel like I need to adjust the saddle. I feel like I'm a little low. All right, more to come. I am now on a much quieter street, Kathleen Street, and it is, like I said, substantially nicer. I am enjoying the temperate temperatures. I was looking at all of the various places where friends and family are as I was skimming through to see what the weather was looking like immediately around here. And I'm drawing the long straw with my delightful low 60s and sun. It is much better than being in DC or Western New York right now. Speaking of Western New York, I saddened, of course, because the last time I talked to you, the Bills were still in the playoffs and they are no longer, and I just passed the stadium for the local team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They too are no longer in it, and they lost their quarterback. This has been your football minute. We will issue sports ball for the rest of this fine program. This is going to be my route. It is very residential. There's other people on bikes, which is delightful. And interesting, very concrete homes, single level, probably, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, very solid middle-class neighborhood, but so quiet considering Spruce is just literally 1 block away. This is much better, even though there's a bike lane on Spruce. This is so much more comfortable and quiet. Sedate, maybe would be the right word. Tranquil, even. I saw some backyard chickens earlier, which prompted me to turn on the microphone again, just in case that was a thing in this particular neighborhood. You know how I love to share the soundscapes of things. I am finding, to my disappointment, that my saddle is sinking regularly, and I think that this is going to be a problem because I once again realize I did not bring a crescent wrench with me because I am a dummy. So I may be in the market for one at a big box store or something like that, just to give this a slight extra tighten to stop the slide. There's also the possibility that I could clean the, I don't know what to call it, the stem, because when they're dirty or got even the slightest bit of grease on it from fingers or whatever, they will tend to slide. But I'm hoping that maybe I can get this to work a little bit better. I really would like to not fiddle with the tightness on this, just because it literally just came from the shop and it clicks in really nicely. It feels exactly right. So I don't know. We'll just have to see how that goes. I wouldn't call this a major mechanical or anything problematic, but it might be a bit of a hindrance or an annoyance for the short term. Unfortunately, I wish I had known this before I left the airport, because there was, of course, a bike service station there that I could have done sighting. So actually, that's another thing, is that maybe I can just keep an eye open for something like that. Maybe Ybor City will have something like that. I do actually have a dim recollection of Ybor City having something like that. So we shall see. I think that's about all I got for you. Maybe next check-in will be Ybor City. From Ybor City and the Blind Tiger coffee shop? I don't know what to call this, but it is awesome, very cool, very quirky, very gothy and cool, and very of the area. I got a Cortado, which is delicious. I think it's got a little condensed milk in it, and steamed milk as well. Normally not my type of drink, but it is really good, and it might become my type of drink. I may seek that out in other places. What is the time? I have no earthly idea. Pardon the microphone. Dead cat seems to be working. It is 11:55, so I feel like I'm a little behind schedule, but that's fine. To say what I have as a schedule is kind of overstating things. I'm all about, let's see, if we're about 8 or 9 miles in, that sounds about right, on a 40-mile day, so yeah, we're getting close to a quarter in. So I'm going to enjoy this. I will soak it in. I won't dawdle though. I think I said in the preview episode that I'm too rush, and so I'm trying to stifle that urge.
Oh, I don't know, girl. I keep wanting to call this place Sit. It's Drip.
A little extra soundscape there. Yeah, so I'm feeling a little under the gun, but the reality is I have probably about 6 hours of sunlight left, and not nearly the need for that much time. So I'll speed up. I will later on. I will also probably take my lunch to go rather than sit. So more to come. We are rolling back into the headwinds, and boy, let me tell you, today's going to be a lot harder than I'd originally thought it would be, just because I am getting, when I am going eastbound, a consistent 15 to 20 mile per hour wind right in my face. So I was going north for a bit there, and that was much better. So we're just going to have to gut through it today. I'm going through a cemetery right now, so it's a nice and quiet ride. I think that there's a lot of open questions about whether or not cycling through a cemetery is considered okay or not. I know in Portland there are some issues with one of the cemeteries on the southwest side of the city. The mileage is going to come harder than most, and we'll just have to deal with that. Beautiful day though. I'm keeping my cycling rain jacket on for the moment. It seems to be the right call. I may move to sun sleeves at the next stop. I think I'm gonna probably grab something for lunch, as I mentioned before. I had a nice breakfast sandwich. That should get me a good chunk of the way, but I think I will want something else later. All right, more to come. All right, we are, I would say, firmly outside of Tampa by now, and it's harder for me to tell because this is a different route that I'm taking. Is it a better route? I don't know, man. I think that one of the things that I thought I would share on this trip is this may be, I may take a year off from this particular route. It is really direct to get to Lakeland, and then consequently to the Orlando area if I decide to do a Disney trip like I am this year. But it's just not a super fun ride. The infrastructure is here. There are lanes. It's great. Even a lane as I'm approaching the cross up and over I-75, a major north-south interstate here. So it's great. It's here. But it's a trail that it's not unlike the Ohio to Erie Trail in that it's some trail and some road. Cross Central Florida Trail. What it does is it starts in St. Petersburg and goes well north of where I am right now, and then cuts to the east. And if I do indeed decide to go that route for next year, I think it would be a different type of trip. It would be a camping trip rather than a credit card touring trip, which means the logistics change a little bit. It's something to think about. Speaking of things to think about, holy smokes, this headwind. It is fierce, and I've been getting some breaks from it when it swings to come a little bit from the north rather than from the east. But boy, oh boy, it is dead on, and I'm noticing my speeds
my speed has suffered as a result. So I know I'm working really a lot harder doing this ride. So I'm going to feel the 40 at the end of the day. It will be very interesting to see what tomorrow is like, because if the headwinds subside tomorrow, 55 shouldn't be a problem. However, if I am continuing to get this kind of wind from Dover, Florida, strawberry fields, seeing dozens of folks picking strawberries over here, which means we're close to Plant City, folks. Home of the Strawberry Festival and the world's most dangerous Carny rides. That's coming later, as promised. But we're in the slog part of this ride. When you got a headwind like this, and I haven't ridden mileage like this in months, we're past the point of halfway. The mileage is kind of downhill from here, which is great. And once I get to Plant City, then it starts to feel like, all right, we're almost there. And I think just mentally it's a lot better. I think also, once I stop having to go east and turn north, which is right around the Plant City area, I think things are going to look and feel a little bit better. It's actually a little bit past that. It's actually when I'm more in Lakeland. But, I think the last maybe 10 miles or so may feel a little bit easier just because of the headwinds not being so bad. But I do think they've shifted just slightly. I don't feel like that they're right directly on me right now, although the flags seem to indicate otherwise. This route, as I mentioned before, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but it is mentally more taxing. I've got the opportunity to make a stop later on, so I'll do that. And that'll probably do me some good. I did not get anything with caffeine in it earlier, and I think I'm going to do that at my next stop, where there's a gas station or something of the like. I have found that especially when I'm flagging a bit, it feels real good. It's kind of a shame because my train has been going really well. It's not like I've been tearing up the mileage, but I don't come in here completely fresh. But, well, more to come, probably in the Plant City area. All right, so I stopped. All right. We are 13 miles away from the end of the day. I think this will count as my good break. It took me a while, and it felt like it took longer than it did. But it's 3:16 right now, so I will probably sit here for another 10 minutes and just recoup a bit. I think I'll do some stretching to make sure that my calves don't pull on my fascia too much. Things you learn when you end up having a plantar fasciitis. So I think this is a good stop. And hopefully these last 13 miles will go a little bit quicker. But boy, oh boy, I saw that wind was in the forecast, but it said it was coming from the north, so I just didn't think that it was going to impact me all that much. I thought, I'll have some crosswinds. It has manifested very differently than forecast, at least. So it is what it is, and I'm getting through it. I'm glad that this is my short day. I will be checking tonight to see what the wind situation is going to be tomorrow. I believe I mentioned this earlier. Again, this is a weather and food podcast, which I basically made the case in the segment. Tomorrow, the rain, it looks like it's going to be later in the day. So my plan is to get up very, very early and to kind of just bang out miles and try to beat that out. So it'll be interesting to see if there's wind in the morning, what direction it's coming from, and how strong it is. Because that would be kind of a double whammy if I ended up with similar winds to today and then ended up getting rained on at the end of it. But look, you draw what you draw on bike touring, and that's just how it is. I will say that I've been really lucky in the years that I've done it before. I had a little bit of a spritz of a drizzle of a mist one time. That was when I was going the opposite direction. But that really wasn't that bad at all. I mean, in fact, it was kind of welcome, to be honest. Right now, this is probably the worst conditions that I've had, as beautiful as it is. I mean, hard to complain. It's like, low 70s. Sun is even ducking behind clouds occasionally, which is kind of nice. Just those winds. I do not like. Invisible hills, as a friend of the show, Brock Diz, used to say. All right, more to come. From the Polk County line, we have crossed from Hillsborough County into Polk County. Whoa, in a moment, and I just lost. Let's see. Yes, the danger of my open pen here is precisely what happened. If I have something light on it and I go over a train track like I just did, it's going to hop out. But now I have it. All right, so feeling a little fatigue, which is to be expected just given everything that's gone on. But I do that break was everything, to be perfectly honest. A little bit of sugar, a little bit of caffeine, that has done it. It's funny, the sandwich that I bought has been staring at me since I bought it. Probably 15 or 20 miles back. And I just have not been interested in it. This has been a common thing for me lately, where I will get lunch and I'm just like, it's just too much for me, because I'm hydrating and, getting my calories from, a couple of almonds here and there and whatever. So maybe for breakfast tomorrow, maybe dinner tonight, I don't know. It's going to depend on how I feel. I've not checked to see how much my mileage, but I suspect we're under 10, and that's good. I should be at the hotel, I would imagine, sometime in the 5 o'clock range. I don't know if you can hear it or not. I'm hoping you can hear me. I still have not really sampled the worst of the headwind recordings, but just brutal. There's no let up at all. So it's as if I've been going up a hill the whole way from Tampa to here. And Lakeland actually does get a little bit hilly. There's a bit of an incline coming up, so I'll get that as well. All right, more to come. About 3 miles to go, and we are at Lake Bonnet, and it is beautiful, and the wind is just whipping off of it, and it's kind of crazy, but all good as far as I'm concerned. I'm less tired than I thought I would be at this point, and I'm less fatigued than I thought it would be. I think that sugar caffeine break is paying dividends, and I've just been sort of nibbling on some trail mix for the rest of this time. So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do for dinner tonight. I definitely am looking forward to kind of getting off the bike and maybe hopping in the shower and just kind of like letting the hot water soak in and all that. But yeah, it's funny how mid-ride I was like, oh, this is terrible, but I feel really good about conquering this wind, and I'm really looking forward to seeing whether or not this is going to be getting me tomorrow as well. But we'll see. All right, next you'll hear from me, probably at the hotel, and probably wrapping up the end of day 1. From Lakeland, Florida, and not the most luxurious hotel I've ever stayed in, but as you all know, I am not picky when it comes to hotel accommodations. Is this better than the one that I issued for being a little kind of not great? No, but it'll do. It's fine. I'm perfectly happy with it. It's reasonably clean, and frankly, all I'm going to do is sleep the sleep of champions tonight. Not sure what I'm going to do for food. I'm sitting there staring at my sandwich, and it doesn't look very exciting. There's plenty of stuff to eat around here, but a lot of it is kind of, big box, could be anywhere in America kind of stuff. There is that one restaurant that I had identified that is, it's a hike. Yeah, it would be better for me to bike there, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of ready to be off the bike for a bit. So I'm going to kind of assess my options and see if there's something that is the least objectionable option for me, and go there maybe in about a half hour, 45 minutes or so. But in the interim, I am going to jump in the shower and rinse off some of the prodigious amount of grit that I have on me. One of the things that you learn quickly is that the dirt in Florida is all sand, and so you end up feeling like you did a day at the beach when you were nowhere near the beach. It's just kind of funny that way. But overall, I'd say great day, considering that wind, that headwind was so rough, and I'm really glad that I just kind of gritted it out and pushed through.
The break that I did take was exactly timed right. I'm really glad I did it then. I'm not sure if more breaks would have been better, but I did the thing that I do a lot, which is I just keep biking and I keep pushing through, and sometimes that leaves me really, really fatigued by the end of the day. This time, that one break that timed really perfectly ended up working out really well for me. I think the fact that I only had a 41-mile day probably helped with that, because 40-ish miles is not a full day for me typically. But I have discovered, as I've talked about on past tour journals, that the Brompton, my mileage really should not be 60. 60 is a kind of a low day, or an average to low day for the big bike. I can usually do upwards of 65, 70. But the Brompton, I've found that is really not a great mileage. It's just there's little things that you're constantly adjusting, so it's not a perfect set it and forget it kind of ride. And I certainly had that with the C-post falling down all the way through. I think that I am going to try to give it another clean and see if that works. I also realize I've got my multi-tool, and I might have something in there that I can give this maybe a quarter turn of a tightening and just see if that helps tomorrow, because that would really make a huge difference for the riding tomorrow. I would really, really like to hit the higher mileage, but I'm not going to consider it a failure if I don't. Conditions are going to dictate everything for that, so we'll see. I'm excited to bring you along for the ride, but that will be in another week. Statistics. Average sustained headwind speed, 20 miles per hour. Cortados imbibed in Ybor City, 1. Number of times I committed Carny ride slander that was lost to the headwinds in Plant City, a minimum of 9 times. I'm so sad you missed all of this. Coke floats that rescued my energy, 0. Separately purchased Coke and ice cream that rescued my energy, 1 each, also lost to the headwinds, sadly. Miles biked, 41. Flats, 0. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedal Shift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedal Shift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one shot and annual options. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadis, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joaquin Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Jody Zaranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemiss, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latois Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Ronald Paroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Kropke, Todd Grossbeck, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Lico, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCullough, John Hickman, Carl Presseau, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Michael Azuski, Hank O'Donnell, David Zanoni, David Weil, Matthew Sponseller, Chad Reno, Spartan Dale, Carolyn Ferguson, Peggy Littlefield, Lauren Allensmith, Eric Burns, Thomas Pearl, Darren McKibben, Richard Stewart, Dave Fletcher, Jack Smith, Luke Parkinson, Ryan Patterson, Sarus Faravar, John Gardner, and Sam Scruggs. And thanks also to all past and anonymous folks for helping make this show happen.
Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.